In the 4th century BC, the Chinese created a flying top that historians believe was the first device built to fly under its own power. 4 feathers fixed to a stick, lifted vertically through the air when spun between the fingers of a child. Some 1,500 years later, Leonardo da Vinci proposed his now famous air screw, which he believed could spiral swiftly high into the air. Man held the basic secret of vertical flight for nearly 2,000 years. But it wasn't until adequate propulsion systems were developed early in this century that man took his first flight in a helicopter. No weapon packs as much firepower in so versatile a package as the helicopter. Designed to adapt, the helicopter strikes on its own terms.
Bedtime.
Your laser is armed, sir. Okay, come down. Okay, you got a target right there. Roger. Let me go on. Good hellfire launch. It's a new target. You got somebody on the ground. We just hear you there for a handoff. I'm gonna see if I can get you something. Spot's on. Okay, I think we're on set. And Team 2 will be covering egress from Toronto. There's 6-1, I got 8 left. Use them on the egress. Down low, down low. Team 2 fire. Roger. Nice shot. 3, 2, 1. Fire. 3 is step. They're gone, sir. We're out of here.
Packing the punch of an artillery battery, the tank-busting attack helicopter is the most lethal rotary wing aircraft.
In the battlefield, the helicopter has the advantage of being able to hide, hover, stalk its prey, ambush its prey. A fixed-wing fighter aircraft, a ground attack aircraft, usually can only make one pass at a target. The helicopter has the ability to be agile, to use the earth, the folds in the earth, trees, and other obstructions, to be able to sneak up on its enemy, fire its missiles, and retreat. Although it was designed in the late 70s, the Apache is basically the world's leading state-of-the-art attack helicopter. It's capable of carrying up to 16 Hellfire guided missiles with a range of 8 kilometers. It can operate in most weather conditions, most ground conditions.
Darkness does not ground the Apache, even on the blackest of nights. Special night vision sensors allow the pilot and gunner to fly and hunt the enemy. Infrared detectors locate even camouflage targets in the most rugged terrain. The Apache's 30mm chain gun can blast 600 rounds a minute into enemy armor. Sighting is exceptionally easy. The gunner has only to look at the target, and the gun tracks his line of sight automatically. But the Apache isn't built to be just an offensive weapon. It's built to be a survivable weapon.
The modern helicopter are flying black boxes full of defense suppression equipment, electronic warfare equipment. They're armor-plated. They have their systems duplicated and sometimes triplicated in order to survive being hit. It can run for 30 minutes without oil in its gearbox.
The unmatched speed of the Apache comes from the two turbine engines that drive its rotors, the same type of engines that power jet fighters.
The Apache is the high point so far of that helicopter development, and it brings to the scene enormous number of advantages that are really not related to helicopters, but instead to the science of computers and the science of materials. Materials which are strong enough to serve as armor, but light enough to be effective in a helicopter.
The lightweight armor that protects the Apache's two-man crew is not steel, not a metal of any kind, but a composite of boron carbide and Kevlar fibers, the same material used to make a soldier's helmet. The Apache met its first combat challenge in January of 1991.
During Desert Storm, although it had initial teething problems with sand in its engines, it was highly successful in detecting and destroying Iraqi armor, Iraqi troop concentrations, and radar and other special facilities.
I'm on him. Be in there. Come on, forward and fly. Looking good, guys. That was a cheap right there. Okay. Roger, you got a spot. All right, good shot. Find another one. Got one left. Go vehicles, everything. Okay, I have a tank for you. Ready? I was supposed to everything down. One forward. Got it. Give me another one. There's about 3 kilometers into the drive. 4 or 5 Victor 44, November 44. Roger. I was told you. Good, yeah.
This newcomer to combat quickly proved its value on the modern battlefield. At precisely 2:38 a.m. on January 17th, laser-guided Hellfire missiles from 8 Apaches began bursting into 2 early warning radar sites in far western Iraq. In 4 minutes, both radars were destroyed. The Apaches, however, were not the first helicopters to cross the Iraqi border. An Air Force MH-53J Pavlo led the way for the Apaches on that pre-dawn raid.
The mission was to destroy 2 radar sites and create an alleyway, a corridor for the fighter aircraft to enter Iraq from Saudi Arabia and destroy their targets. We were the logical choice because we have such an enhanced navigation system that we were very, very accurate. The Apaches do not have a very sophisticated navigation system, and they had the confidence in us to be able to lead them in, so when it's time to do their mission of destroying that radar site, they're fresh and they're ready to go.
The Pavlo is equipped with exotic navigational aids and electronic warfare black boxes that blind enemy radar and surface-to-air missiles.
I was the first aircraft into Iraq. We were worried about being detected. We were worried about, is this site indeed exactly at the location that they told us? It was pitch dark at night. There was no moon illumination, nothing. I was about 3 or 4 miles to the south of the target while the Apaches are shooting at targets. They destroyed both targets. It was a complete success. And within 10 minutes, I saw a freeway of aircraft starting to fly over. Although our mission was small, just take out one little radar site, we made a significant contribution towards the successful effort of this war.
The fighting helicopters of Desert Storm in 1991 grew from the tenacious struggles of early visionaries. Some of these flying machines indeed hovered above the ground, but none had the control to make them practical.
The early days of aviation were full of colourful characters, and the same is very much true for the early days of helicopter development. In the late 1930s and 1940s, there were a host of characters, particularly in the United States, all wanting to conquer the problems of vertical takeoff and landing. Igor Sikorsky wasn't by any means the only pioneer. He just happened to be perhaps the most successful.
Igor Sikorsky emigrated to the United States from his native Russia in 1917. He had already established a reputation as a successful fixed-wing aircraft designer when he began to tackle the problem of vertical flight in the late 1930s. By the spring of 1941, Sikorsky had overcome most of the obstacles that hampered earlier inventors, but the unpredictability of his VS-300 did not dampen his enthusiasm for the helicopter.
I remember a good friend of mine and a very prominent designer, scientist in aviation asked, when would the helicopter go faster than the airplane? Do you know that? I said, yes, I know. The answer is never. When would the helicopter be more efficient than the airplane? Do you know that? I also said, yes, I know that. Never. But I said that helicopter will do a number of jobs which no airplane will do, and which in fact nothing else will do except the helicopter. So that the idea that a vertical lift aircraft type, that was one of my dreams. I wanted to do that as long as I'm alive. What kind of a gadget or machine can give you unlimited freedom of transportation?
Every test flight, successful or not, led to further refinements in the stability of his invention. The key to his success was understanding the relationship between the main rotor and the single tail rotor. The mechanism that Sikorsky pioneered to control the pitch of these blades is still used today. In May of 1942, Igor Sikorsky delivered an improved version of his VS-300 to the United States Army Air Corps. The YR-4, or Hoverfly, proved so successful during test flights that the Army ordered 100 into production.
That's a great idea, this helicopter, and it works. A craft that flies forward, backward, sideways, rises and drops like an elevator. It turns as easily as your car. The extent of its uses is boundless. Perhaps you can suggest a few more. Shoot 'em in. We'll have the helicopter pick 'em up.
We had to hold on to this thing to make sure that it would do what we wanted it to. You never dared let go of the controls. You never dared take your eye off the horizon, which is all you could fly by. There weren't any instruments, any flight instruments. The worst thing was learning how to hover. And learning how to hover is sort of like learning how to ride a bicycle at very slow speed. You can do it after a little practice. And what you try to do is to hold it still, and it starts to drift. There's a gust of wind or something moves you sideways, and so you correct, and zoom, off you go the other direction, and then you come back. And we used to see it was very dangerous being on the flight strip during those days, because these things would be zooming all over the place. People, the pilots, the student pilots, overcorrecting.
Early in 1944, Harmon and 3 other pilots shipped out with their R-4s to join General Wingate's commandos fighting the Japanese in Burma.
The helicopters arrived aboard the C-46s, and at that point, we're in 2 pieces, or 3 pieces if you count the blades. The front section, which had the cockpit and the engine in it, and the rear section, which was the long tail, which housed the tail rotor. And that had to be unloaded and carted to the engineering area and reconstituted as a flying helicopter. So we all pitched in, put them together, and test-hopped them.
By April, the helicopter was ready for combat.
So Wingate, who was in charge of this long-range penetration, it was his baby, wanted air support. He wanted to get his casualties out by air.
The small L-1 and L-5 cargo planes could carry Wingate's wounded fighters to safety only from rough airfields cut from the jungle. Many men perished before they could be brought out of the jungle to these waiting airplanes. On April 21st, when an L-1 loaded with 3 wounded soldiers and piloted by Ed Murphy Ladovchek crashed in the middle of Japanese-held territory, Wingate called for a helicopter to rescue these men. Immediately, Carter Harmon wrestled his fragile R-4 unarmed deep into Burma to bring out the surrounded survivors.
After a while, I turned up there. So I landed, Murphy came rushing out, yanks open the door, and he says, "You look like an angel." And that surprised me. I mean, I knew that he wanted to get out of there, and I knew that I was going to take him out, probably. But I was surprised that he felt so strongly about it. I didn't feel strongly. I felt that I was just going to do that, and I wanted to get it done. More than anything else, I wanted to just get it done. I didn't feel that I was making history or that I had risked my life. I didn't feel that. But it felt, that I was part of the whole sequence of events, with Sikorsky thinking this is a good machine for rescuing people. And I went ahead and I showed that it could be done in his machine. I mean, people say, would I do the same thing again? And I certainly wouldn't, because I know too much now. And when you're in your 20s, you think you're going to live forever. You just can't imagine being splashed all over the tarmac or shot in the ass or something. One of these things. You don't know enough to get scared, I think.
During the Korean War, hundreds of helicopters clattered into the air on life-saving missions of mercy. With confidence in their newly combat-proven machines, some adventurous air crews rigged rocket pods and machine guns to the chopper's skids. When they glided over the battlefield, they discovered a new weapon of unmatched firepower and agility. The rugged terrain of Korea challenged the infantrymen nearly as much as combat with the enemy. The steep hills, deep valleys made for miserable obstacles that confronted the soldier at every step. Movement of troops was slowed by the lack of passable roads and bridges. Many units reached their positions exhausted by the arduous march. But new transport helicopters freed the Army from the forsaken terrain. In 1951, 12 Sikorsky HRS-1 transport helicopters airlifted over 200 combat-ready Marines and nearly 10 tons of supplies to a distant hilltop, enabling the Marines to outflank a North Korean offensive. This was the first air assault made by helicopter. As soon as the fresh combat troops disembarked, the wounded men were placed aboard and flown to hospitals for treatment.
If the helicopter as a weapon of war had its conception during the Second World War, it was the Korean War which gave it its birth. Everyone's familiar with the sight of helicopters in the opening sequence of the MASH television program. Those Bell 47s, flown by US Army pilots, ferried many hundreds of wounded soldiers back from the battlefield, sent them to mobile hospitals which saved their lives.
Convinced by the performance of helicopters in support roles, the U.S. Army began experiments to arm their choppers. Larger transports like the Sikorsky Choctaw could carry 18 soldiers into combat at 120 miles an hour. By moving entire units, military leaders found that they, rather than their enemy, could dictate the location and time of an engagement. With sufficient helicopters, an army could enter combat prepared to fight. The impact of the helicopter was growing rapidly.
Troop landings were carried out using helicopters, resupply missions using helicopters, and most of all, probably, the rescue of downed aircrew. Even operations behind enemy lines were carried out by helicopters. The Korean War gave the helicopter a kick-start into modern warfare.
When the pilots of the 101st Airborne Division whirled away from the deck of the USS Iwo Jima in 1965 to their base in South Vietnam, they foreshadowed the role of the helicopter not only as a weapon, but as the symbol of the United States operations in Vietnam.
If the helicopter was born in the Korean War, then it certainly came of age in Vietnam. Vietnam was a helicopter war, whether it was US Army, US Navy, US Marine Corps, or US Air Force. All the forces used helicopters. Initially, the helicopter was used in a support role, carrying men and materiel to mountain outposts and small clearings in the jungle. Later during the conflict, they were adapted to carry weapon systems, guns, cannons, rockets and missiles, to give fire support to the troops on the ground, and also to protect the troop-carrying helicopters.
If the Jeep was the all-purpose vehicle of World War II, then the UH-1 deserves that title in Vietnam. The UH-1 was the first production helicopter to fly with a gas turbine engine. Vietnam presented the soldier with many of the same problems he faced in Korea. The terrain restricted movement of troops and supplies. The Mekong River flooded the coastal plain of the south, and monsoons dumped 100 inches of rain over most of the country. Roads between major cities were often nothing more than footpaths. The Huey, as it was nicknamed from its original designation of HU-1, was built as a medical evacuation helicopter. The Huey is credited with completing nearly 500,000 medical evacuations during the war. Early in the war, helicopter tactics were applied inconsistently. As capabilities evolved quickly, Army doctrine could not keep up with the advancements. But in 1965, the Army implemented a new concept called air mobility. This new idea for warfare depended on the coordinated use of transport helicopters, gunships, and air ambulances to move large numbers of troops by air rather than ground to encircle and outflank enemy units. The UH-1 was armed with just about every weapon that a helicopter of its payload capacity could carry. The Huey carried various pods loaded with high explosive and anti-personnel rockets and 7.62 millimeter and 50 caliber machine guns. The Huey proved very capable as a gunship.
Eventually, before the end of the war, the US Army had ordered into production the Bell Cobra, the world's first dedicated attack helicopter, capable not only of using guns, cannon, rockets and missiles against ground targets, but also flying shotgun for the troop-carrying helicopters. Its two-man crew were protected by armor, it was fairly agile, and it had the speed to be able to negotiate and get out of difficult firefight situations.
The AH-1 Cobra gave the foot soldier a powerful and agile new weapon to add to his arsenal.
Vietnam showed that the helicopter was a capable weapon system, was a capable transport, that armies couldn't really command the battlefield without it.
The largest and most powerful heavy-lift helicopter to see action in Vietnam was the HH-53. In the hands of the Aerospace Rescue and Recovery Service, the Super Jolly Green Giants entered dangerous enemy airspace over 1,200 times to pull downed pilots to safety.
This is an enormously important morale factor when you know that if you're shot down, if you have to eject, that they're going to come in and get you, and they'll do anything that they have to do to get you.
After the aircraft flew up around me, I thought I was dead at first right there. You get that feeling, all of a sudden you're just dead. And when I got on the ground, I thought about that and what I was going to do next.
The 6 is down right over here on the other side of the trail.
Charlie Green 60 taking ground fires in 6 o'clock position. Sandy, come and get him, come and get him. From the ridge line. Roger, taking ground fires in 7 o'clock position from the ridge line. Come and get him, Sandy.
Charlie's over there. Okay, Charlie Green, this is Sandy 3. You got some more Willie Beats right off your nose.
Look at the fire. Okay, keep looking. Contact at 3 o'clock.
Put it right behind him.
Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Taking out the slack. Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Slack down. Survivor's coming up. Hold your hover, babe. Hold your hover. Looking good. Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Survivor's coming up. Is about 10 foot off the ground. Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Hold your hover. Survivor's coming up. Hold your hover. You're close to the tree. Hold your hover. You're right about 10 foot below the aircraft. 10 foot below the aircraft. Hold your hover, babe. Hold your hover. 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 Survivor's at the door. Survivor's coming in the door. Survivor, finish secure. Let's get the hell out of here. Okay, talk to me. We're coming out. Go on, coming out. Coming out. Okay.
Just follow that valley, Charlie.
The motto of the rescue service, that others may live.
I'm Captain Lita Danke, flying a UH-1 helicopter today for the Air Force. We're flying with the 3247 Test Squadron. Also with us today, Captain John Davis. He's also a UH-1 helicopter pilot. And we have Sergeant White as our flight engineer and Sergeant Holman as our photographer. Today we're just out on a training mission, doing some instrument approaches at Eglin Air Force Base, and also doing some sling load training.
It's really rare to be a woman helicopter pilot in the Air Force, mostly because a large majority of the helicopter missions are combat, so women can't do them. Right now, as I understand, there's 7 women helicopter pilots in the Air Force, and that's compared to about a total of 1,000 helicopter pilots, so it's not even 1%. It appears to me that a lot of the restrictions that are on women now are starting to ease within the military. Even 10 years ago, there was a lot of different aircraft you couldn't fly. I couldn't have flown this aircraft over 10 years ago. Even up until 6 months ago, a woman couldn't be pregnant and fly at the same time. I'm about 5 months pregnant at this point. But now they've changed those regulations, and now we're able to fly up until our 6-month point. Of course, it is our choice. If for some reason we feel that it's too hazardous or something, we don't need to fly. If I gotten pregnant over 6 months ago, I wouldn't have had the opportunity I do now to fly during my pregnancy. And that would have made things a lot more difficult to me because I wouldn't have been able to maintain my currency, and I would have had the whole 9 months off of flying, and I think that definitely hurts your career and just your flying capabilities to be off of flying that long. Typically in the Air Force you get 6 weeks of maternity leave, but you don't have to take that all if you don't want to either, and you can go right back to flying.
Captain Danke has been piloting UH-1s for 5 years.
Now it's not that surprising to see a woman piloting one of these kind of aircraft, and I expect in the next few years to have even more and more aircraft open up to women. And I'm sure it won't be an overnight process. I'm sure it'll take years, and it'll take a lot of adapting within the military to allow women to be able to do all the different jobs. I feel bad that 10 years ago women couldn't do the things I do now, and that even 10 years before that they could do even less. But I imagine the next 10 years women are going to be able to do almost every job in the Air Force and any of the other military services as well. We're physically and mentally, intellectually and emotionally capable of doing all the same jobs that men are.
Her mission for the 3246th Test Wing involves flying a variety of sensors and cameras in the bay of her helicopter that record the performance of prototype weapons being test-fired from other aircraft.
Well, I initially wanted to fly a helicopter because I felt that I could do somebody some good, maybe could save a life. Like, I think all of us grew up in my age group anyway, seeing the Hueys were the people that were in there rescuing the downed pilots in Vietnam and things like that. And that's initially why I liked helicopters.
She rekindled the spirit of those pilots one Sunday afternoon in 1988.
I was stationed at Ramstein Air Base, a little bit southwest of Frankfurt in Germany. We were sitting alert during the Ramstein Air Show, and we happened to be there when they had the crash of the Tricolore.
Ladies and gentlemen, the cardioid break by Italian Air Force, Tricolore.
Since we were all sitting there, 2 feet from our helicopter with the helicopters cocked and ready to go, we were able to just cross the field, wasn't but, less than a mile away, and be able to go over there and pick up people. I've never seen human bodies in that condition before, and I've never heard people yelling the way they were and things. There were, small children that had been very badly burnt, and they were just carrying them onto the helicopter. And I don't think you really got a chance to think about it till after the event, because during the event you just thought, how fast can we get these people to the hospital? Each of our 2 helicopters were probably able to take 5 or 6 loads of people. We weren't equipped with any medical equipment. One of the reasons we were doing that was that the helicopter sitting next to us, which was the actual rescue helicopter that the Army had there, had been hit, and one of their pilots had been killed by part of the debris from the crash. When an event like that happens that is that emotional, I think in a way you probably turn off a lot of your emotions and just go back to your training. The fact that you've learned how to start this helicopter, hundreds of times, and you've flown it so many times, you just go back to all the procedures that you've had ingrained in you, and it all becomes second nature. So you can turn off a lot of the emotional things that you really don't need to have going through your mind at that time, and just go back to what your training says, what your job is, and how to accomplish your mission. But it's probably the only time that I've been in the Air Force that I felt like I did the mission that I planned to do when I came into the Air Force, and that was to do rescue, maybe actually save some lives.
That afternoon, Captain Danke and her crew saved the lives of 12 men, women, and children. Although used primarily for covert operations and deep infiltration of special forces, the MH-53 Pavlos of the 1st Special Operations Wing performed another equally important mission.
We were pulling alert out of northern Saudi Arabia on the 21st of January. And the call came early in the morning that an F-14 was down. And they tasked us with trying to find the crew.
An F-14 Tomcat, piloted by Lieutenant Devin Jones, was shot down on January 21st over the barren desert of Iraq.
Once you've got a guy on the ground and you know he's there and you know he's alive, it's time to change the plans and do whatever it takes to make sure you can get at him.
Captain Trask and his crew flew many hours in broad daylight in their search for the stranded Navy pilot.
And the hard part was he was now so far north that we were going to have to cross the major highways that run east-west from Baghdad over toward Jordan. And these were our biggest threats in the whole theater, was to cross those roads because they were heavily traveled with military vehicles in the middle of the daytime. We were painted brown camouflage and just hoped we were far enough away they really wouldn't realize that we were bad guys. And we got across there okay. From there, the A-10s started talking on the radios again, and then they started vectoring us to where they knew he was at. And the A-10s actually told us when to start flaring to land because we still didn't know where the guy was. Well, it was about the time we were in the middle of our flare when the vehicle rolled up.
An Iraqi truck came in from our 11 o'clock position, and I called him out about the same time the A-10 pilot called him out on the radio, and Major Homan, the co-pilot, told him to smoke the truck.
We immediately made a break away from the truck, and the A-10s immediately rolled in on it. And all we did was make one big loop and turn back toward it. And by the time we got turned back to the truck, it was just a big smoking hole. 30-millimeter cannon on an A-10 is going to take out a truck every time. But the truck actually rolled up to within 50 or 100 yards of where Lieutenant Jones had dug his hole in the desert, and it was coming straight at him. We made a real quick stop landing, rolled up right next to him. Pararescuemen jumped out of the back, ran him, grabbed him by the flight suit, pulled him on board. We were on the ground about 20 seconds, and we pulled pitch and turned back south to get out of there.
It was a great feeling. I mean, we still had to get out of Iraq, and that was just secondary, knowing that we had picked him up and he was safe inside and we were going to get him out of there.
He came up to the cockpit and stuck his head in there, with a big grin on his face, and patted everybody on the shoulder. That was a pretty good feeling.
I was glad to be a part of it. We all were proud. I mean, we got one of our guys back.
All the training that we did and the work that we did paid off, and we did it right. We got in there and we got Lieutenant Jones out, and we didn't get shot down, and nobody got hurt, and we pulled it off. It was a pretty great feeling.
In 1909, Wilbur Wright wrote in a Dayton newspaper that, like all novices, we began with the helicopter, but soon saw that it had no future and dropped it. Today, helicopters serve the military in so many ways, it's hard to imagine any nation's armed forces fighting without them. When considering its mission, the modern attack helicopter, with its incredible agility and ability to deliver awesome firepower, bears more resemblance to an aerial tank than it does to Igor Sikorsky's early egg beater.